Well, hello, folks. I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily Neo-TA wrap, where we look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we ask ourselves what happened today and what does it tell us about the coming ones. I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of the Rocky Mountains. You can find us on YouTube. Shows are archived there under the channel L.A. Little. So as we get started here, what happened today? Let's go to the numbers first. If we look at what we have, pretty much flat. I mean, we really didn't have much movement. Russell was up slightly. The industrials were up slightly. Absolutely flat on the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ pretty much flat. NDX down slightly. Elsewhere, what was the big movers? Gold. Gold had a 1.5% almost. Silver was up almost 1%. Copper got beat down by 1.25%. And we had the natural gas up again. Dollar slightly weaker. Now, tomorrow, we've got three, actually tonight, Bank of Japan. Tomorrow, we've got two central bankers going to tell us what they think. And the setup going into that is just the same as it was last night, and probably set up just a little bit better to try to bounce higher. If you remember last night, we were talking about the setup was for these markets to try to bounce. And if we pop over to the charts and take a look at the markets, you can see that setup yesterday underneath Friday's low, back over it, but it looked like it might be able to test again. I think I even said it that way. It did test again. Matter of fact, it opened lower, or actually it opened just slightly above Friday's lows, and then quickly took them out and shot back up. So S&P 500, the volume 35.3, the big bar down was 37, so you still have less volume. You go under it again, back over it again. This time you lead pretty much a doji sitting there. And this thing, to me, looks like it's going to try to bounce again. And it's going to do what it can to get back up here. And what it's going to try to do is go back after that retest regenerate zone. So that top of that zone is about 1943. That's where it wants to head back up to. And that's going to be a big test when it gets back up there, because it's already tested it once. When you come back within 6 bars, you got about a 50-50 chance in terms of getting over it or staying underneath it. But you had a huge, big spike down. That makes it pretty hard to get back up. Now you come up the next time. If you get up here the next time, I think the odds are a little bit better that you might make it up to the top of the next one, which is almost the breakdown bar's top. And then that would be the critical area, because that would define whether or not you're going back into the higher range or you're staying in this lower range. And that really is going to be the question as this market plays out, up or down, because now you've got these 3 ranges, and in those 3 ranges, they're like building blocks. You get down into one. If you can get above this area, you'll try to get to the top of that area. And so those ranges become kind of important. Right now, it keeps testing the bottom of this range. And what is it trying to do? It's trying to build another one, right? If it breaks, it's going to try to build another one about equidistant down, which is going to take it into the high of the high volume low. But it's got to get the breakdown, right? It's got to break down underneath here, and then it will try to get down to there if that's what it's going to do. But right now, it doesn't look that way. And matter of fact, not only does it not look that way here, it doesn't look that way elsewhere. If we pop over, look at the NDX. Remember, last night, the NASDAQ composite, the NDX, didn't even get down to the low to test Friday's low. Well, today they did. NDX 38.55.35. You get underneath it, you go back over it, you have less volume. That's a test failure, just like on the S&P. It's a test failure to push lower. What does it mean to test fail? That says you get under it, you have less volume, you close over it. Buyers are stronger than the sellers. the sellers walk away at lower prices. They're unwilling to sell at those lower prices. That's for now. That doesn't mean it will be true in the future, right? Because the market is evolutionary. It changes over time. But for now, they're not willing to let it go at cheaper and cheaper prices. That's how a bounce forms. So again, this one looks like it's going to try to pop back up. The NASDAQ composite proper didn't quite make it to the low. If we pop over and look at it, you can see it got very close, but not there. Less volume as well. If we look at the Russell pushing higher with volume. And that's a totally different story, right? It's the only one doing it. You got 353, you're pushing into this low, it's got 338 on it. So the low was 1131.42, you hit it 1131.64. So you go into that bar, you come back down. So that's a failure, but you had higher volume. So you're pushing into it with higher volume, that means you're going to try to push it again. And the story here, the initial story, will be how does it handle the retest regen. Right now, that's exactly what it's testing. And it just so happens, as many times, it just so happens that it lines up with something of significance as well. That makes it very difficult to get over. If the Russell gets over this price point, it has one more right above it, which is the breakdown bar. And then after that, well, there's really not much else until you go back up and do a full retest on this swing point low that was broken. And that gets you up into the 1150 numbers. So Russell so far, the strongest index on this bounce attempt. And the Dow really didn't do anything, so I'm not even going to cover it. I'm going to flip over to the world markets next, though, because we've got a lot of news coming out of Europe. In particular, Great Britain and the ECB, the Bank of England and the ECB. And so let's pop straight into what those look like. I'm going to start with France. France tries to test lower, or does test lower, tries to break down, I guess is what I should say. Can't do it. Flips around, less volume. This thing's going to try to bounce back up. Where's it going to bounce to? Well, the first test is back into this little area. That's where that resistance zone is going to be thick. So that's going to be a tough test to get over. But assuming it gets over it, then it's a retest regen of these bars inside of it, which happen to be right at the top of the breakdown bar. So if I'm looking at this and asking myself, where can this one go? Well, initially it's got to get over this area, but then 43.37. So the CACs, the CAC 40 France, does look like it's going to try to bounce. Then we skip over to the other two, the FTSE. FTSE doesn't look that way. FTSE actually tests lower, closes higher, but has higher volume. That one suggests it will probably try to test again. If I look at the DAX actually gets underneath Monday's low, can't bounce back up into it, has more volume. This one's still in no man's land. If we look at it on the weekly, remember we have a break on multiple swing points. This break is pushing it down, and it's attempting, it is a break of this bar, the 93.67. It's attempting to do what it should do, and that is to carry 2 to 3 bars on the longest time frame, which in this case, of course, is the weekly. So DAX still struggling. FTSE tests lower, fails, but has more volume, so can test again. CACs wants to bounce. And that's in front of the news. So what's the news going to do to it? Well, your guess is as good as mine, but it looks like these things are ready to try and bounce. I don't know what they're going to say to make it bounce. And I don't know what they're going to say in particular, because if we look at the currencies, it's a story over there to behold as well. And we'll flip to those after this. Let's finish up here, though. If we go to Asia, which is probably starting, they've already started trading. And I don't have the numbers on them, I haven't pulled it up, but it looks to me like Asia is going to try to push higher tonight. Here's the Hang Seng, the Chinese Shanghai on the Hang Seng. So this is the 8 shares, which is our best proxy for Shanghai. And it gets under, back over, less volume. That thing's going to try to go back up and attack those highs. If we look at the Hong Kong, the HSI, Same thing, under, back over, going to try to go back up and attack the highs. If we look at Taiwan, which has been the one that's been beat up the most, under, back over, but a little bit more volume, so that one could test some more, but it was just slightly slightly more volume, so it may not, because that's a hammer reversal over there. And then we look at the Nikkei. The Nikkei comes down, it tests into this bar from June 19th, which is the big bar here. Can't get underneath it. This one has, ranges as well, and I don't think I've drawn them in, so I will take a minute here to draw them in. But you've got the range at the highs, you've got the range in the middle, and then you got the one at the lows. And right now, it's trying to get to the bottom. That's what it's testing. Looks like it's going to hold, though. Flip back around and go try to test the top of it. So that's where the Nikkei is, and we'll see what the Bank of Japan does to evidently help that market, because it does look like it's going to try to bounce here. So that's those. Let's go over to the currencies next, because the currency markets, if we take a look at these guys, again, we've got central bankers in the morning that are going to deal some news. They're going to talk out of both sides of their mouths again. We got FXE that tests lower again, has a little bit more volume, again tries to rise. Remember last night it was under, back over, looked like it was going to bounce. Well, today it tests lower again, back over it again, more volume than yesterday, but still less volume than that bar was trying to break from July 30th. So once more, FXE stubbornly refuses to go down. It's testing into this low, doesn't have the volume. Now that could change with the events taking place tomorrow. That low on the weekly, 131.74, you got down to 131.63. That to me, you've already got your 2-bar extension. That to me looks like this is going to bounce. So I don't know what they're going to say, and I can't quite jive it in my mind how a stronger euro is going to help the equity market, because typically the weaker the currency, the better. But it does look like both of them are going to try to work higher. This one more likely immediately, and maybe that the equity market's selling down first and then trying to rally. And if I look at the dollar, which has a big weighting in the FXE, dollar goes up, it makes a new high, has more volume, but if you compare it to the July 30th again, less volume, that looks like a failure at the highs. That looks like the dollar is going to try to finally pull back. And the dollar, if you remember, was testing, got over the highs, was trying to get up and test this one, 21.85. It gets to 21.78. That looks about as far as it's going to go. If we look at gold, gold had a big turn today. Gold spiked up early this morning, closes with the doji, a nice spike up. It's in the middle of the range. And I know everybody likes to get excited about it, and maybe there's a reason to get excited about it at some point. But this range has seen some trades over and seen some trades under, and so far it hasn't done much about either one. In the middle of it is where all the action is, and that's where it's trading, and it's right there at the top of the bottom range. If it gets over it, expect it to go up and try to attack the top. So gold to me still a range trade at some point, and I like this setup still from the longer term perspective, but it's got to do something, and so far it hasn't done it. So you just have to wait, because gold has a habit of doing exactly what you see here. Go up, go down, go up, go down, go up, and I don't know if you noticed, but these are getting smaller. So I guess if you were to do the old regular classical, I can't even do it here because it doesn't match, right? But anyway, it's going up and down. It's kind of got this triangle thing going on, and at some point it's going to break. The real question is, what does it do when it gets the higher price? Do they pay up or do they not? And that's what we'll be watching. Let's see. Bonds. Let's go to bonds next. Bonds failed today. Bonds go up over that high, less volume, back underneath. Bonds couldn't make higher highs, couldn't get back up to the highs. That was the breakdown bar off the top. Gets back up there, fails. This again looks to me like just a big range trade, and it's been testing the top of that range for a while. Let me try that again. It's been testing the top of the range for a while. and it looks to me like it's going to come down and test the bottom end of the range again. So bonds, I don't know. I haven't traded them recently, and until they set up again, I don't see a reason to. Let's go to the sectors. And if you have questions, or you want to ask questions, or you have stocks you want me to look at, you can reach me 303-912-9110. Just text me there. You can email me at support@tatoday.com. I can get them on either of those, or of course if you're logged in, you can hit me up on live stream over there and type into the window, because I will have some time. So when I look at all of this in summary, it does look to me like we're going to try to bounce tomorrow. I said that last night. I'll say it again today. That's the setup. That's where we're at. And if I dig in a little bit deeper here now, you'll see on the sectors that in fact even is a stronger case tonight than it was last night. So let's pop into the sectors next and see what we got there. So I'm just going to start from the top and flip through these and show you what I'm looking at. So you got a swing point low down here. Now we've had a lot of damage done. We've come straight down on a lot of these indexes, and in some cases we've set up now ABCD structures to the downside, but in many we haven't. We have to catch a bounce that allow that to set up. For example, in this one there is no B point yet. It just simply hasn't set up yet. It did come in and test this low today, 142.90. That's the June 12th low. 142.81 was the low today, less volume. That thing looks like it's finally going to bounce. Stocks. Remember last night we were talking about it should bounce. And what we were looking at was a test of the Friday low, up underneath it, less volume. That's a setup for a bounce. Well, test it again today, even less volume. Back over it. Also sets up for a bounce. XLB. The XLB actually starts the bounce. And so XLB, sorry, just a second here. Let me get this typed in. The XLB runs back up towards the breakdown bar. And what you want to watch, as I've pointed out before, as these things bounce, and this is a good example of it, is you want to look at the swing points that were broke and say, okay, where are those highs and can we get over them? So remember we were talking about the S&P 500, second time up, it's going to have a little bit better of a chance to get over it. Same thing here. You're coming back into it again. You already tested it once. Here you come again. Got volume picking up on the way back up. This may in fact be able to get out of this, close this gap, and try to work its way back up. If I'm bullish, I want to see some of these sectors start to turn. I want to see them blow away those retest, regen bearish ones, right? That would give me more confidence that the general market wants to work higher. And I don't want to see more of what I'm seeing here with the XLU, for example. XLU trades lower, volume expands rapidly, right? Just blowing out the lows. And if you go to the weekly, it looks to me like it's going to break on the weekly. That's going to be the third sector to break on the weekly. That's not a good thing. The more that break on the intermediate term time frame, the more likely it is that all of them are going to break. And so now we've got 3. 3 is a pretty magical number. It doesn't mean they'll all break now, but what it is something you got to put in the back of your head, and that is that even if we bounce now, the odds are becoming increasingly larger that we're going to see this come back again and try to break them as time goes on here. So that's the XLU, but short term we still look like we want to break higher, or bounce higher I should say. XLE, this one had a kind of a heavy volume but lighter test yesterday. Today it spikes up, back down. I think this one can test again tomorrow, but it is going to try to bounce as well. The XLF actually looks a little bit better, and these are the major sectors in the S&P. XLF gets under Friday, back over Friday, less volume, right? You can see it over and over in all these charts. The XLI, same way. XLI gets under, back over, and now, I didn't look at the XLI when I was doing my pre-wrap. This one actually looks different. This is a failure. It gets over it, but it has more volume, so this one can test again. And this one's getting dangerously close down here on the weekly. Yeah, this one does look like it's going to test again. So the XLI is certainly not higher or neutral. It's lower still. XLK got it under, back over. I think it got over. Let me check it again. I forgot. 3860. No, it closed underneath it. So XLK gets under it, but can't get back over it. So this one's a little bit more of a question mark. And then the other one, the only one that's still strong is the XLV. XLV trades under, back over. This one, let me see, XLV. Here we go. And that one trades back over. So it trades under all the lows, back over, it holds. This one does look like it's going to bounce. This one actually, and here's one that actually has an ABCD structure in place now, and it's the strongest one still. We'll see if it can carry. This will be a good one to watch, because with it being the strongest and I take it back, doesn't have an ABCD because it hasn't closed underneath the B point yet. So still not one. It was setting up, but it didn't allow it to happen. Okay, let me take a look at any kind of questions that I have. So first question is, are there charts that will show price adjusted for dividends that are free to use? Yeah, there are. There's two of them that I know of. First of all, stock charts. I'm pretty sure, let me pop over here. I'm pretty sure these charts are adjusted for dividends. You could check it out and read it, but I'm pretty sure they do, and they're free. And the other one that I'm certain has that is bar charts. Bar charts has both, and I believe bar charts, the default, oops, not that, what is the name of it? It's bar dash charts maybe, or something. You have to look them up. Yeah, there it is. Is that it? No, that's still not it. I'm not sure what the evidently I can't remember, but maybe it's bar chart. I don't think it's plural. Let me put chartin.com. Yeah, if I can spell it right, hang on. I believe that's it. They have both, or at least they used to. And I believe the default here it is, barchart.com. I believe the default here is adjusted data. So you could get it there. So both of those, they give it to you. Okay, let me check, see if anybody wants me to answer questions via email or text. And you'll have a chance if you want to enter in another question or two for me. I have a few minutes. And I don't see a text. And let me quickly look through here. Nothing in email. Cool. All right, so I've got a few minutes, so what I'm going to do is dig down a little bit. It's not something I usually do, but I have a little time, so I'll do it. I want to look inside a couple of these sectors that are the biggest weightings and see what these guys are doing, because XLE in particular, this one has some huge weighting. It has about 30% of its weighting in 3 stocks, so I want to quickly look at those. ExxonMobil is the first, almost a 16% weighting. That one tested under, back over, it looks like over, let me see, 98, 93. Yeah, it did. Less volume. This one's going to bounce. Look at all the swing points it broke, folks. 6 of them. I don't think I ever remember seeing 6 broke at once. I'm sure I have, but that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. And what that tells you is you've got resistance a long way back. Let me look at the weekly. Yeah, so you're back under price points from December. Well, yeah, December. That's pretty amazing. Now, mind you, it went down lower and back up, but essentially since April, you're pretty much under. So anybody since April is losing money if they're still in it. Okay, so but ExxonMobil is going to bounce short term, and then it's going to do a retest regen. Now, it already started a retest regen once, which tells you that more than likely it's going to try to break it this time up, and it certainly will probably try to get to the top of it. So I would think ExxonMobil bounces up to there. The other big one in there is CVX, which is Chevron. That one's 13% of the weighting. So you got about 29% of the weighting in these two. And this one couldn't get back up there. So that one's still weaker. And anybody in there since early June is underwater, but that's true of most stocks. I don't see this one bouncing much. So that's going to be a weighting on it. And the other big one was Schlumberger. Schlumberger gets back over it and had a nice big bounce, a big spike up bar. This one's going to hold and bounce, and this one could actually bounce quite a bit higher, all the way up to 113. So that's going to help. So XLE does look like it's going to bounce, just given the weightings. Okay, let me look at, I want to look in the financials, because there you have big weightings too, and that's another important sector. Let's see what this one looks like. So if I pop into here, the largest weighting is Wells Fargo. It's about 9% of it. And Wells Fargo could not bounce back. So let's look at the weekly. Wells Fargo looks like it's going to try to test lower still. 49.30 up to about 49.67. So the largest weighting is not going to give it a big bump up. The other large weighting is Berkshire Hathaway. That one had a nice big pop on the earnings, and that one looks to go higher, so that's about 8.5%. JP Morgan is the next highest weighting. That one also looks like it can bounce. And then the one after that I think is about 6%. Is Bank of America. Also looks like it can bounce, and Citigroup also looks like. So all you got is Wells Fargo coming down. So the majority of the weighting in there looks like it's going to try to bounce. So that confirms. So XLE going to struggle. XLF probably going to bounce. And let's take the other large sector, consumer discretionary, and let's see what we can see in there. So top weighting here is Comcast and Disney. So Disney earnings came out. They couldn't break over the highs, but they had as much volume. So the high here has got about 10.6, and they got 9.7. It will try to attack it one more time. Comcast is the other largest weighting, and that one is selling down. That one's not going to bounce very much, if any. Amazon also not going to bounce much. Maybe it comes back up to this high, but that's about it. So XLY is not going to do much for the market. Let me pop over to the shared list. Let's go look at the XLK. Inside here we got Apple. It's about 15%. And Apple, so earnings was here, and yeah, it's struggling. Yeah, Apple just looks like it's going to meander. I mean, it's not clear what it's going to do. It's an inside day today. The next largest weighting in here is Microsoft. If we look at Microsoft, that one looks to bounce, and then Google and Google L are the next two. That looks to bounce on Google. Google L also looks to bounce. So it looks to me like XLK will try to push higher as well. The other two big weightings in here are the telephone companies. T just totally sold off. Spikes up and it sells off dramatically. That's going to be putting pressure in this still. And Verizon's the other one. And Verizon actually pressed to the lows with volume 2. So telecom's not going to help this sector. So that one also is going to struggle a little bit. Well, those are the big weightings, and that's about all the time I have. So how far will it bounce? I'm not sure what we're talking about. Sorry, I didn't see when that note came out, and I've ran out of time. So I know you're a member. Why don't you ask me in the morning on the morning broadcast, and I'll answer it there. Okay, folks, I'm going to have to leave it at that. Tomorrow, ECB, Bank of England. Tonight, Bank of Japan. That's going to be the drivers tomorrow. And, of course, geopolitical. Russia evidently putting out some sanctions tonight of their own, so we'll see how that feeds. on this market as well. Have yourself a great night. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time. Good night, folks. Take care.